In just 30 years, one dynasty looted more gold from South India than the British would steal in 3 centuries. But the true horror of the Khilji invasions wasn't just the treasure they carried away. It was the systematic erasure of entire civilizations that followed. The year 1296 marked the beginning of what would become medieval India's most devastating chapter of conquest and plunder. Alauddin Khilji, the ambitious nephew of Sultan Jalaluddin, had just murdered his uncle in cold blood to seize the throne of the Delhi Sultanate. But Alauddin's hunger extended far beyond mere political power. His eyes were fixed on the legendary wealth of South India, kingdoms whose temples gleamed with gold, whose rulers bathed in diamonds, and whose treasuries held riches that would make even the Mongol Khans weep with envy. The Deccan plateau, stretching across central and southern India, was home to some of the world's most prosperous kingdoms. The Yadavas of Devagiri controlled vast diamond mines. The Kakatiyas of Warangal possessed the famous Koh-i diamond. The Hoysalas of Halebidu had accumulated centuries of wealth through their control of spice trade routes. And the Pandyas of Madurai sat atop gold reserves that seemed inexhaustible. These kingdoms had flourished in relative isolation, their wealth growing like compound interest over generations of peace and prosperity. But in 1296, that golden age was about to end in blood and fire. Alauddin's first target was Devagiri, the capital of the Yadava dynasty. The city's very name meant Hill of the Gods, and its temples were adorned with precious stones that caught sunlight like captured stars. When Alauddin's general Malik Kafur arrived at the gates with 20,000 cavalry, the Yadava king Ramachandra faced an impossible choice: fight and watch his people die, or surrender and hope for mercy. Ramachandra chose surrender. It was a decision that would haunt him forever. The Khilji forces didn't just loot Devagiri, they systematically stripped it bare. Contemporary accounts describe soldiers carrying away gold by the cartload, their horses struggling under the weight of precious stones. The famous Devagiri treasury, accumulated over 2 centuries, was emptied in a matter of days. But the true tragedy wasn't the gold that was taken, it was the knowledge that was destroyed. Ancient manuscripts, astronomical texts, and mathematical treatises that had taken generations to compile were used as kindling for cooking fires. Emboldened by this success, Alauddin set his sights on an even greater prize, the Kakatiya kingdom of Warangal. This fortress city was considered impregnable, protected by 4 concentric walls and defended by war elephants, whose tusks were tipped with iron spears. The Kakatiya queen Rudramadevi had built one of medieval India's most formidable military machines, with an army that had never known defeat. But Malik Kafur had learned the art of psychological warfare. Instead of a direct assault, he began by devastating the surrounding countryside, burning crops and poisoning wells. Refugees flooded into Warangal, straining the city's resources. Then came the siege engines, massive catapults that hurled not just stones but the severed heads of captured villagers over the city walls. After months of siege, Warangal's gates finally opened. The looting that followed was so systematic that Khilji historians themselves called it the Great Gathering. The famous 1,000-pillar temple was stripped of its golden ornaments. The royal treasury, which contained the legendary Koh-i diamond, was completely emptied. But perhaps most devastating was the capture of thousands of skilled artisans, goldsmiths, sculptors, and architects, who were marched north in chains to serve their new masters. The pattern repeated across the Deccan. At Halebidu, the magnificent Hoysalaswara temple, with its intricate carvings that had taken 40 years to complete, was defaced and looted. The Hoysala king Veerabalala III watched helplessly as centuries of artistic achievement were reduced to rubble and melted gold. In Madurai, the Pandya temples were stripped so thoroughly that local chronicles described the city as weeping tears of gold. But the true scale of the devastation only becomes clear when we examine the numbers. Conservative estimates suggest that the Khilji invasions extracted over 300 tons of gold from South India. This wasn't just wealth transfer, it was economic annihilation. Kingdoms that had taken centuries to build were reduced to impoverished vassals in a matter of decades. The human cost was even more staggering. While exact casualty figures are lost to history, contemporary accounts describe entire cities being depopulated. Yet perhaps the most insidious aspect of the Khilji conquests was the systematic destruction of historical records. Libraries were burned, inscriptions were defaced, and court chronicles were deliberately destroyed. This wasn't accidental vandalism, it was calculated erasure. By destroying the written history of these kingdoms, the Khiljis ensured that future generations would know them only as footnotes to Delhi's glory. By 1320, when the Khilji Dynasty finally collapsed due to internal strife and external pressures, the damage was complete. The Khilji invasions stand as a stark reminder that history is written by the victors, and sometimes the most important stories are the ones that were deliberately erased. In the end, the greatest treasure the Khiljis stole wasn't gold or diamonds, it was memory itself. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe for more untold history every single day. See you in the next one.